Hi everyone, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak here. I was here 2 years ago, and I was very happy when Václav contacted me and said that actually, I had made some critical remarks at the time, so he's giving me a second chance in order to give a better presentation than last time. So, however, I confirm my participation for this conference without knowing the subject or the topic, and then finally I found out this is about clubs and equestrian centers. Well, it is actually not an easy job for someone from the FEI to talk about this subject, because you're going to see that during the presentation. We have a special relationship. Okay, just to touch base on some definitions. For us, clubs are the smallest organizational unit within a sport. This is, I think everybody agrees on that. However, I'm going to show you some differences across the world. The purpose is practicing one or more sports, so we have also multi-sports clubs, and we have in the equestrian world probably very specialized clubs. But they might differ from very small local organizational units to highly commercial or commercialized entities. Normally they are regulated by national authorities, and speaking here on the FEI behalf, please also understand that when I speak I have the international context in mind. So that means we're thinking about countries and regions outside of Europe, which are kind of sometimes very, very different from what is going on in Europe. And they are embedded into a national sports structure, more or less. And also here I'm going to give you some other figures later on. Centers is a venue with significant facilities, with equipment and equine human resources. They are regional or even with international areas of influence. They are regulated by national authorities, and they are embedded into a national sports structure. However, going back to the FEI, I think most of you know the FEI. We are the world governing body. We have about 133 national federations. We have no authority on national level. And that is a very important element, and that caused the problem for me also to set up this presentation for you. Because at the end of the day, we have a clear differentiation here between what the FEI is responsible for and what a national federation is responsible for. So in this particular case, we have no direct contact with clubs, centers, or athletes. So actually, my question is, or was, what do we want me to talk about? Anyway, there is an element here that I would like to stress. One is, first of all, all of that, as a theoretical model, we have clubs. Then in some countries, the next hierarchical level is called district, but that is very local. I mean, I don't insist on these terms. Then you might have states, and then you have the national federation. Whatever you call that, but you understand the concept. And then there is a clear separation towards the FEI. So we are kind of seen as the world governing body for the sport, but in fact we have no influence on that substructure there. However, we also have what we call a development program, and in the context of that development program, we feel that it is necessary to help national federations to grow the sport where it's currently not very well developed. For that purpose, we did a little survey a while ago, and I wanted to share some of these statistics with you. And for those who are familiar with similar statistics, it is no big surprise that 95% use the club as the small organizational unit within a national federation. However, in the study that we had made, the minimum was 0 clubs in some countries, and obviously in a few countries, and the maximum was 7,600 clubs within one country. And guess what the biggest one was? It was, I think, Germany. Then if you calculate the statistics, of course, if you manipulate the statistics, as you know, you can manipulate all statistics the way you want. But we did it the way that we took out let's say, really the extraordinary ones, like Germany. You come down to a number of 267 clubs per national federation on average, which doesn't mean a lot, but it shows you that the club system is quite vastly developed. However, it's getting very interesting when you talk about the regional level. There is no regional, what we can call federation, regional federation, in 41% of the countries participated in their survey. That's quite interesting because normally the regional federation is the contact point between the clubs and the federation. But there are different reasons for that, and for example, we had situations where a federation was composed of 7 clubs. So the board members on the federations were recruited from the clubs directly. And that is, of course, and you know, everybody probably is already aware, this is in very small countries. This is a setup that actually makes a lot of sense. Because then, you know, when you have an island or something, then it doesn't make any sense to separate the island by districts. If you need, let's say, half an hour to get around the island. But for those federations that had a regional structure, we had about 7 regions per national federation on average. And that's the quite shocking number that I found, because we asked the federations whether they had control about their national structures. And quite a significant number, 47% said they have no control of what's going on, for example, on the club level. And this actually is something that obviously does not apply to a lot of European countries, but outside of Europe, the situation is, I can tell you, very different. Okay, I said this last time when I was here, and I'm going to say that again. We have actually 2 paragraphs in the statutes that are very interesting for this discussion. The first one is clear. It defines basically the FAI's mission on developing the sport worldwide. And when I came to the FAI, I was wondering, you know, where this whole area of leisure sport is actually embedded in the statutes. And quite a big surprise to me was that it's written down that we encourage instruction and horsemanship for recreational purposes. So what the FAI basically does at this moment is we acknowledge that there is a leisure area that we are interested in. This is very important because you also keep hearing from some representatives within the entire equestrian sport that the FAI is only responsible for equestrian sport. This, according to our own statutes, this is not 100% correct. And it opens the door also for collaborational projects with the equestrian industry. So, speaking about the equestrian industry, I wanted to use that image because it highlights something that I think is very important to stress. The FAI is basically an organization relatively small with, let's say, maximum 40, 50,000 people they manage, you know, of which 30,000 per year are the registered riders. We have 133 national federations, yes, and we have great exposure. The Olympic Games were mentioned, World Equestrian Games, European Championships, Pan Am Games, Sea Games, whatever it is, we have a lot of exposure. That's fine. But compared to what I call the equestrian industry, and Ben mentioned already the statistics that we have gathered within the European Horse Network, it is amazing how big this industry is. And if you talk to people from other sports, and I've done that at the example of football, I've spoken to the people from UEFA. They were quite amazed because they did kind of similar studies for football, and they are about in the same level. Let's say for Europe, it has been calculated or estimated that the annual economic impact caused by the horse in Europe only is about 100 billion euros per year. 100 billion euros per year. And that was quite interesting also for the politicians at the European level, because when we've talked to them and invited them for talks, they were actually very interested to hear that 450,000 jobs are directly depending on a horse in Europe. And if you think about 6 million horses in Europe and 11 million cows, and you compare the discussion between the two of them, actually the equestrian industry seems non-existing, and the farmer industry and the milk subsidies seem to be on the agenda all the time. So it is a big industry, but there's a lot of understatement, meaning that we don't play that card of the size of the industry very much. Now, what's the FEI perspective on all of this? For us, the clubs are the centerpiece of sports development, that's for sure. And what's most important for us, for equestrian athletes' careers. This is where they usually start. It has been already mentioned by Ben, and we are totally committed to that as well, that we think it is very important that actually horse welfare, clean sport, are being promoted on the club level. We feel that the clubs are the interface between the equestrian sports and the recreational riding. And this is also very interesting when you see that again in other sports. I always see this example of basketball. Basketball, if you think about a brand called NBA, everybody knows NBA, and it is a big brand. But what is it? It is just a national basketball league in one country. But they have done a bloody good job to promote NBA. And everybody knows what NBA is and what it stands for. But the question is, does anybody know the World Federation for Basketball? So that is an interesting concept that's behind it. And for us, it is very important that, for example, the FEI starts spreading the brand also onto the club level, into recreational riding, so that everybody who's actually mounting a horse is aware of who the FEI is. But that is obviously a long way to go. Centers, for me, they are reference points. After the fact that the military get less and less involved into preserving the knowledge of how to teach, how to ride, the question is, who keeps all this knowledge about traditions and our best practices, etc., etc. These are probably the centers as well as the national federations. And I'm sure in where they are, where these centers are being located, there's a good collaboration between the centers and the national federation. However, they are basically the ones that are being responsible to preserve this knowledge for the future. We have, of course, an issue here with regard to the commercialization. The commercialization is omnipresent. at the end of the day, what we have to admit is that every activity in equestrian sports must have a kind of a financial equivalent. Otherwise, it will not last very long. And even thinking the opposite, it will be difficult to let the sport grow. Okay, standards are variable. What I mean with this is the following. Since I joined the FEI, I received, I don't know, 3 times, 4 times per year, a request from a center from all over the planet. Harald, would it not be possible that we are becoming FEI recognized center? So I said, interesting idea, you know, and is that something that we should look into as FEI? Because at the end of the day, what we could do is we could think about establishing a network of FEI accredited centers, whatever that is, and why should we do that? Anyway, the point is, I visited some of these centers, and I have to say that the standards are actually very, very different. And what these highly motivated directors of the centers do is they promote their center, and they are very aware that it's a fantastic center, but it's a fantastic center in their national context. And if you go to another country, you might find 10 of them on the same level or much higher. So that's the interesting point where also the FEI can come in and say that, well, we have a look, we have a kind of a distant view on this, and we can actually set standards so that in all the various countries, centers can actually develop towards a certain standard. The question is, does that make any sense? Till now, I haven't made any huge progress to convince my leadership on thinking about this kind of approach. Now, what is our other perspectives here? Some ideas here. I've listed some ideas. We should promote the concept of a democratic structure within the sport. That means from the clubs through the districts to the states level and to the national federations level. However, as you can imagine, we have some countries as members where this concept becomes already a political issue right from the beginning. So what always has been said is don't mix sport with politics. I say no, because sport is in some way embedded into a legal structure of a nation, and therefore we have to actually admit that we have some political influence as well as a sport. Now, whether the concept of democracy is the right thing, I don't know. I have grown up in a democracy. I think it's the right way to go. But I have to admit that in other countries, people have other opinions. I don't want to mention any country here, but I think you are reading newspapers every day, so you know what I'm talking about. What we can do is we can also provide a central platform, for example, across the world, saying that what are best practices in order to run a club? Because what happened is clubs are being shut down and new clubs are being created. People are more or less experienced in how to run a club. Can we probably create a platform on how to share best practices for all kinds of aspects of a club, if legal or commercial or sport? Shall we even produce standards formulating, you know, what is a good, what are the basic requirements in order to run a club? Is a club model so local that it is totally different from one country to the next, or are there some similarities between clubs all over the planet? That we can look at, and we can promote these standards, because it will help especially new, or let's say existing clubs that would like to improve, or new clubs that would like to come up to establish themselves. Definitely the FEI is interested when we're talking about clubs, that the fact that the sports careers start within a club, we have to promote the clubs as well as the sports career. And that comes back to a very simple thing. As you know, that the equestrian sport let's say, in the young generation is in competition not only with TV, iPhone, computer games, but also with other sports. And I always felt we should promote why is it particularly beneficial for young people to pick up this sport. And and where can you actually end up as an athlete? Do you have a career? In how much, when that is actually a big IOC issue, and the Agenda 2020 is coming. Equestrian sport is being criticized for the fact that it is only accessible for relatively rich people. This is an idea that the IOC actually doesn't like. And so we have to make sure that equestrian sports is accessible everywhere in the world by, I would say, almost all classes, because golf, tennis, bobsliding is also, there are sports that cannot be practiced, and not everybody can actually have access to all the sports free of charge everywhere. You know, and the first bobsliding team from Kenya, we are going to wait quite a while for that. However, the international career as an athlete starts in a club. We have to promote that this is the place where you have to go, and we can do that with the help of our international top athletes, because they are in the situation to promote this concept with a much bigger impact than any of the FEI officials. We should encourage the creation of centers in countries. However, as I said, there is the commercial aspect behind all of this, and there is this element of setting up a center. This might be one thing, but to have sustainable income and to have a sustainable center for quite a while, hopefully financially self-sustainable, that is the big question mark, and that probably doesn't work without governmental help. And then there's this question, shall we create an accreditation scheme? Shall we create something like FEI accredited training centers? I have no idea. I'm happy to discuss that. Does it make any sense? And is that something that we have the demand? But I can tell you, thinking about the amount of work, or let's say resources that we have to invest into quality control is enormous. That's the downside of it. Now, to create a global reference point for equestrian knowledge, you know, because I said that we have this issue that national federations, schools, and are responsible now to preserve the equestrian knowledge. That is something where we can maybe also use the tools, the modern tools, and I would like to conclude now with a very short number of slides about a new project that we are going to launch. What we are going to create is an e-learning platform for the FEI, for all FEI officials, for all FEI members, and later on also, of course, for the public. We call it the FEI Campus, which is basically then embracing both the sports aspect as well as the recreational leisure aspect of horses and horse riding. We have some areas to be included there. One is we are going to develop a biosecurity portal where basically also riders and officials can learn something about the biosecurity, like Ben has highlighted it with lots of examples. That, of course, will then also be multilingual. We are thinking about developing an anti-doping education module, and we are also at the moment discussing internally whether riders that are registering with the FEI must complete the anti-doping education module in order to release their registration with the FEI. And that the reason for that is, and we all know in e-learning you can cheat, you can send your grandmother and do the same thing. But what I mean is the writers have to sign a legal disclaimer that they have done it themselves, and in legal court cases they cannot say anymore, I was not aware, where are you publishing that information? Is it possible for me to follow the rules if they are not being properly communicated? Well, you have done the module. Have you done it yourself? Yes, so you must know. So it's a very interesting concept. We are thinking about developing something for our athletes. That comes down that also athletes require employment. Sometimes not all of our athletes can actually live from the sport. So we are going to provide some help in order to find places where they can actually obtain a professional degree. The schools, the sport, and the whole horse industry is absolutely perfect for that. It's only that we need to link those athletes to the rest of the world. We are working on an FEI sustainability program. That basically means for event organizers, we are going to provide information about how to organize a green event. This is one of the main pillars of the Olympic movement at the moment, and international federations are requested to come up with programs on environmental sustainability. And I think for the horse environment, there's actually no discussion about that. It is absolutely necessary, and so we are going ahead with this. We are going to create an equine science platform, something for training and coaching. And actually this one here, the horse management module, next week I'm going to see the EEN, and we are trying to set up a joint project with the equestrian schools in Europe in order to produce something for horse management, grooming, and publish that so that it is available for everybody in terms of kind of recommended minimum standards and good practices. Something that I don't know whether this is of interest for you, but for the FEI it's a big issue. We are going to offer for all the FEI official language training so that especially those who are involved in international competitions have a possibility to study English from home so that they can actually communicate then at the events properly. All the FEI officials, those who have an FEI ID number, will be able to use this campus for free of charge. For the rest, we have to see. I have the feeling that it's going to be for free for everybody. It will be responsive. That means you can use that on all kinds of devices. And finally, it will come next year. So we have the funding. We are in the process of development, and yeah, it's a lot of work, but it makes fun. Thank you very much, and happy to take your questions.
No questions? One question from Mr. Szewczyk from Marek Szewczyk is a blogger and journalist, very involved in the horse sports.
Powiedział Pan o tych kilku federacjach, gdzie nie ma w ogóle żadnych klubów. To bym chciał dowiedzieć się na ten temat coś więcej. Podejrzewam, że są to jakieś małe kraje, ale w jakim regionie świata, na jakim kontynencie? No i teraz tak, czy słusznie rozumiem, że jeżeli nie ma klubów, to tam zawodnicy należą bezpośrednio do federacji danej lokalnej? I czy FEI w związku z tym przyjmuje to z dobrodziejstwem inwentarza, czy na przykład te małe federacje namawia, żeby tam też kluby założyć?
Well, I try to understand.
The question was about, you said that some 4 or 5% of federations have no clubs. So that means, we guess that riders in these, well, the question is which federations you are talking about, all right? Which federations there are, on which continents? And the other question is that obviously that means that riders in those countries are not in clubs. So what's your approach to this problem? Do you see it as a problem or not? Mm-hmm.
Well, as far as I remember, the geographical areas are in Africa and in Asia. What they use instead, because horse sport is being practiced, but not in clubs, so it is being practiced, for example, in the military, or at university level, or in schools. But the setup, the legal setup of a club structure is non-existing. But as I said, that is about 5%. This is not very much. However, the big problem seems to me as well that we need, and Lukáš actually highlighted that, we need to also think about the legal setup of a club, because as per definition, a club can be a kind of a very simple get-together of interested people, but it can also have a very serious legal framework. And I'm not sure whether the participants on that survey have distinguished between these two models, because in some countries the clubs are actually very relaxed groups of people that are practicing equestrian sports, but they don't know what a constitution of a club is. They do not have insurances, and so on and so on. All of that is a very kind of relaxed interpretation, you know. So to make sure that all our national federations are using the club model, for the FEI, it's legally not possible. Because how do you want us to interfere on a national level under a national law saying that you have to have equestrian sport in clubs? That can only come out of the country itself, either by convincing the political authorities or by using the indirect path of, let's say, for example, insurances. But the insurances in some countries about, you know, insuring you during equestrian practice, I can tell you this is a very interesting subject, but we cannot compare European standards, for example, with Africa. When you mount a horse in Africa, in some countries, it's at your own risk. And whatever is happening to you is your problem. But if the national federation says, or the national authorities basically say, clubs must be established and must have a certain structure, it's going to happen. But the FEI in this whole game is nobody.
Mr. Seibt, it's a chief of our stewarding community.
Yeah, let's finish that first.
Well, we will finish with Mr.
No, so there was just like part of the question. So just to clarify something. So that means that in those federations without clubs, the riders are members of the federations directly?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Proszę do pana, please for Mr. Seibt.
You mentioned that this anti-doping module have to be fulfilled by all the riders who are going to participate in international competition. Is it right?
That's the idea, yeah.
That's the idea. How do you want to cope with their language?
Well, it will be offered in, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 languages.
Okay, because the rider has to fulfill it or fill it in, yes, by himself. So at least he must understand it. So
yeah, I totally agree.
Okay,
yeah. But it is not that we do not have no experience with this. If you look at the concept in other sports, and one is coming from the Norwegian, I think, Olympic Committee, it's called Real Winner. It's a fantastic website where they have basically created a multilingual setup of anti-doping education in human sports. And it works wonderful. I think in about 17 international sports federations have adapted this concept. And that is being offered, I think, I don't know, 10 or 12 languages.
Okay.
So that is going to be addressed Obviously, it's a question of budget. But I think at the moment where this thing is going to be available, let's say first it's going to be available in English, then it's not going to be compulsory. But and we're going to also improve, you know, through offering it for free, first of all. We are going to learn and improve the system. But then once it's up and running, it's accepted, then we make it compulsory.
I understand. Okay.
So there's a soft introduction, if you want to say so.
Right. And I'm looking forward for this official language training, because it's really something which is important.
Thank you, but for you it's not needed.
Any question more? Okay, thank you very much, Harald, for a very interesting presentation.